All right, so the next item of business is what we call complex conjugates. So let's say I have some complex number z, which is a plus bi. Its complex conjugate is indicated with z bar, which is a minus bi. Note that that's not the opposite, because what would the opposite of z be? Yes, which would make this what? So negative z would make this into what? Negative a minus bi, and see a stays the same here. And so the complex conjugate basically says the imaginary part changes sign, whatever it is. So like, if my complex number were 4 minus 2i, what would its complex conjugate be? Exactly, 4 plus 2i. All right. Now, let's observe what happens when we take two complex conjugates and multiply them together. So if I take z times z bar, or a plus bi times a minus bi, let's observe what happens. FOIL that for me, please. Anytime you're ready. All right, a squared. All right, so I could do plus ABI, whoops, I missed the A, and then minus ABI, right, because you got one of each. And then so that times that would be B squared I squared, right? The ABIs cancel. ABI. What happens to this? Which would make that, right. So this would be a squared plus b squared. So if you're multiplying conjugates together, you square the real part, you square the imaginary part, you add them together, and that's a nice little shortcut. If you forget, just FOIL it out, you'll get the same thing. And keep in mind, this only works if you multiply conjugates. If you multiply this stuff, you have to FOIL this. There's no shortcut there. Understood? All right. So that leads me into how you do division. So let's say that I have 7 plus 4i divided by 2 minus 5i. Now, I don't know about you, but I probably don't know how to divide by 2 minus 5i. And for the love of God, don't do 7 divided by 2 and 4 divided by 5. You can't do that because of the pluses and the minuses. Okay? Don't ever do that. But I do know how to divide by a real number, right? So, because I can divide each piece by just that real number. Well, I don't know if you noticed or not, and I forgot to mention it, but what happens when you what do you get when you multiply two conjugates together? What's significant about that? Whoops. Usually helps if you circle the right thing. Yeah, it's not imaginary, it's real. So, I actually need to change the color on that. All right. So, if I multiply this denominator by its conjugate, I'll get a real number down there, and then I can divide by it. But whatever I multiply the bottom by, I got to multiply the numerator by, correct? So, what am I going to multiply top and bottom by here? Yeah, 2 plus 5i. 2 plus 5i, 2 plus 5i. Now the top, because those are not conjugates, you have to FOIL that. Go ahead and spit it out at me term after term. What's the first thing? Don't everybody answer at once. 14, thank you. Keep going. So plus 35i. Plus 8i. Right. We'll simplify that in a minute. Now, in the meantime, these are conjugates, right? I can FOIL that, or I can use a little shortcut. Square root of 2 is 4. Square root of 5, that's 25. 4 plus 25 is 29. Boom. You want me to write that out? Okay. So when I do this, 2 squared plus 5 squared is 4 plus 25, which is 29. I'm taking advantage, once you finish writing, I'm going to change screens. I'm taking advantage of this right here. When I take two conjugates and multiply them together, that's just the first piece squared plus the second piece squared, it doesn't have I. Again, if you forget that, just FOIL it out, you'll get the same thing. All right. Now all we got to do is simplify the numerator. So, scroll a little bit. What happens up top? All right, so I can combine like terms. What would I end up with when I do that? All right, so I'd have 43i for sure. What about the 20i squared? Yeah, that'll become negative 20. I see you've learned something. Whoops, it usually helps if you don't move the window that you're recording in. There. Usually helps if you hit the scroll bar. So anyway, this becomes minus 20, which can combine with the 14 and give you what, negative 6? Now, this is a picky detail, but I'm going to be picky about it. You've been warned in advance. That's not in standard form technically, because it's not a plus bi. It's not a number plus another number times I. So what we have to do to put it in standard form is we just have to break this apart into two fractions with the same denominator. So all you got to do here is go negative 6 over 29 plus 43I over 29. And technically, you can put the I up in the numerator, or you can put it back here, just multiplied by the fraction. I'm not going to be picky about that particular thing. So you can either write this, or similarly, you could write this. And I'm not going to care which one's which. Fair enough? All right. Let's see. I'm going to let this video render because I'm going to run out of time eventually. See, I can only do 15 minutes at a time. This is at 10:42. So